Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Before I get into this video, I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like or comment on my video, consider subscribing to my channel, and if you dislike the content, please leave a comment. Now, part of the Interdiction Sphere videos that I was making is a cheap build, easy fighting option. Now, the cheap build, easy fighting option is actually more on the cheaper side of combat. Now, one of the ships which is very underused and under manipulated considering its class is the Can-Yue prototype. Now, the Can-Yue prototype is actually one of the faction battle cruisers. It's actually the only faction battle cruiser that you can get in the game. Now, what we have is the prototype edition, so it is a lot weaker than most of the battle cruisers. It's actually still within the line of a cruiser for most of our classes. Now, considering this, it is also a free ship, so it doesn't have a cost to it when you take it into battle. If it's destroyed, you can replace it with insurance certificates. And in order to keep playing on and moving forward into bigger and better things with the game, the one thing that you can do is you can use this to keep making money on using the interdiction spheres and using combat tactics. Now, this is purely for the assault. This isn't for breaking an interdiction sphere camp. Now, an interdiction sphere camp, if you're going to take this in, you're only going to be able to attack the interdiction ship. And no other ship is really going to have that type of disadvantage for you. Now, when you go in with the Can-Yue as part of the interdiction sphere, you now have the opportunity to balance out your play with a nice build. Now, I am actually currently running the same build I'm going to tell you about. So let's go through it piece by piece. First of all, you get 50% decomposer damage with this vessel, and as you can see the other stats, I'm not really going to go through it again, but you can see the basics of it. It even has warp stability built in, and 15% extra shield. Now, looking at all the other stats for it, you'll see that it has a very slow flight velocity, it has a nice amount of overall defense. Now, my overall defense is pumped up uh, due to my skills and my progression in battle cruiser technology, the amount of skills that I've put into it, the SP points. So that's where my cruiser gets a little bit more power and a little bit more speed. Now, looking at the overall, this isn't a very big power grid, and it isn't the strongest of all the vessels that you could possibly own. Now, I'm just going to go look inside the skills, and as you can see, it has more of a shield setup than any other aspect, and it's also very good with power. It regens quite quickly. So, looking at all of this, what could we do on a Can-Yue to run it through blockades or through a whole lot of fighting with the interdiction sphere? Now, taking it into an interdiction sphere, the first thing you have to remember is that this ship is actually free. Now, we have two options on the fittings, both of which we were awarded very early in the game. Now, the ship does have kill marks for me. I am not going to show any of them, and if I do, it most probably will be removed. Sorry. Now, first things first, let's go into the weapon that's on the ship. As you can see, I am using the Return Medium Jetstream Decomposer. Now, running a decomposer isn't really a massive loss to my vessel. I could run another weapon in its place and it won't really damage anything in terms of my effective play. However, these weapons work best with the ship, so it is a good idea to use them in conjunction with the vessel for combat. That means that you're going to be able to really do the best damage possible. Now, looking at everything in terms of this weapon, I have a 32 kilometer radius to fire with it, and that is also due to the fact that I have a low slot made to optimize this particular cruiser. Now, as I said, I am actually going to go through everything with this ship. So 4 of these make up the main part of the ship's how do I put this here, in the ship's weaponry. Now, the next thing that I do have is a drone slot equipped. Now, I am using a small Mk5 drone instead of using the medium Mk5 drone. Now, the reason for that is I'm trying to run this as cheap as possible. Now, one of the other items that isn't cheap on my vessel is the Interruptive Warp Disruptor. Now, besides this here, I do have a cheaper warp disruptor that I do swap from time to time. But when I'm in a fleet, I prefer to use the more powerful disruptor so that I can help my team out in a more effective role. Okay, the next thing on this here is I do keep an energy neutralizer. As you can see, it's the Caltrop medium energy neutralizer. And I do have quite a bit of effectiveness with it. When I use it in any type of combat, I'm using it to pull someone down. Now, something else that I didn't cover was the effective range of fire from the weapon. As you can see, it is explosive and kinetic. So it's a good dealer against your armor. It is a weaker dealer against your shield because it's falling into the two toughest parts of the shield. It isn't falling into kinetic and thermal, which would be an all-round dealing ship. It will deal constant damage throughout the fight. Now, with all of this being given, the next thing that you have to do when pushing in with this ship is make sure that any enemy who is too fast is slowed. Now, I could always change out my neutralizer for another stasis web fire, and as you can see, I'm running an MK5. Now, everything on the ship is as cheap as I possibly can keep it for two very big reasons. Number one, this is the ship that I get killed in the most. Now, that means that this ship runs into difficult combat a lot of the time, and it takes on unusual types of combat, and it does get destroyed. That means that I do replace the armor and weapons and everything on the ship on a regular basis. Now, following through with the next thing on the ship is a missile tracking computer. Now, I'm not sure if the missile tracking computer stacks with this particular vessel's weapons, but I do change my weapons up to rail guns and cannons on this vessel. The reason is that I use multiple types of weapons on it depending on who I'm fighting. And since the weapons are cheaper and less and hold less of a amount in terms of reward, I like to make my kills, if someone kills me in PvP, the smallest imprint, so they don't get that massive reward from killing me. Now, moving on, the next thing I have is a Lone Ranger medium shield regen. Now, I do have another lower class shield regen, but I didn't equip it on this ship. I equipped it on another ship that is being used for the similar purpose. And last but not least, I use the returned macro, which has a specific function for the disruptors. Now, with this being added on to my entire combat strategy, it means that I can fire and fight a little bit better in terms of actual combat. And as you can see, everything here, it tells you exactly where it works. As it says, it can improve the decompressor weapon. Now, all of this being put together makes it a nice cheap build, but it isn't the most effective in stripping away the shield from a ship, and running it in these interdiction spheres and in these areas, it does a fair amount of damage in overall combat. Now, it generally isn't your front line in terms of combat because of the fact that it loses a lot of power. Now, let's get into our fittings. The rig that I put on is always auxiliary thruster. I'm using thruster 1 on it for the least amount of value, capacitor control circuit 1, and the next one is semiconductor memory 1. Now, the reason for all of these being level 1 is, as I said, I'm reducing the cost of this vessel. So as cheap as I possibly can have it while holding the most amount of value. Now, on the other side, you'll see that I have all defensive slots rigged up. That's because it also tanks quite a bit of damage in terms of actual combat. And if you look at my overall defense, it's almost 20,000. It's in the same league as my regular, what is this here? My regular vessels. But with the addition of its particular roll bonus, it makes my shielding it a little bit stronger, and it makes it more effective against enemies. So overall, running this in a shield formation with a MOA or a Phantasm or a Gila is going to give you enough power to help in combat. And even though it is quite slow, with the right fittings, this ship can become a vital part of your attack strategy. Now, going out of this, there was one thing that I don't think I touched on. Oh no, I did touch on it. The fact that I equip a thruster. Now, when you use this in the formation to beat enemies, there are a lot of things for you to consider in combat. Number one, your ship is very slow. So if you're using it in the interdiction sphere, you are going to be standing in direct line moving through your sphere where you are intending to camp. Now the interdiction spheres are rather large, that's the big one, and sitting in the right spot means that the moment someone warps in, the warp speed is going to reduce them to a certain point where they're going to have to either redirect around your bubble or go through your bubble and get out on the other side. Remember, your bubble lasts for exactly 120 seconds, and it does have a small cooldown after it is done. So there is a chance for them to escape. So with all of this being put in, you need to make sure that you have the best possible outcome when it comes to your defense. So you are going to hold up the most amount of damage to yourself and heal it out if possible. You don't want to fall out of the Moa Guardian's field or the Gila or the Phantasm. You want to be staying within that stasis field, uh, that that armor link field, so that all the not the armor link, sorry, the shield module field range, and you want to use this to benefit your attack. Now, since the interdiction sphere is stopping players, you have the ability to hit them in a way they're not going to feel so threatened by you. Remember, your damage is minimal to shields but maximum to armor. So while you're hitting in that slow slot each time, have somebody else ticking away with you to slowly peel away the shield. Now, once the player starts seeing this here, he's going to chase you because of how slow you are and the fact that you have a lot less in terms of shielding. Now, while he's attacking you, the next thing for you to do is to actually make sure that you regen enough shield so that the moment he is open for attack to his armor, you start hitting. At this point, even though he is in a slight panic, he most likely will give up on trying to save his ship. The damage will increase drastically and it will start impacting in his armor in massive numbers. The player will just be giving up, getting ready to set up his next ship. He'll no longer be cared about trying to save the ship because he feels that his ship is about to be totally overrun. At this point, you have won the battle and that is it for you. Now, running it in this type of a formation does have a lot of negative drawbacks. It is the weakest amongst all of the ships to run in this particular class. For a battle cruiser, it only has 4 high slots, while all other battle cruisers have 6 high slots currently as in the game. And besides that, it also has only 4 low slots, while most of the other cruisers have 5 low slots, battle cruisers, sorry. And this makes it in the same class as an elite cruiser instead of an elite battle cruiser, although it is a battle cruiser. Now, using it in combat, it has a lot of application, especially in PvP. With enough range being added by activating your boosts, you can actually hit targets at a slight range and use it in the form of some type of sniper. Remember, this is an armor sniper and not a shield sniper, so you have a better impact against the armor of a ship. And remember, you are running shield regen because shield regen extends your shield the best, especially if you fall out of the Moa Guardian's armor field module's range. So this is about it for how you run the Can-Yue prototype. Now, moving forward, there are a few things in terms of actual gameplay that you need to consider when running this ship in this whole interdiction sphere. Number one, you cannot try and chase an opponent if they're in a fast ship. If they're in a frigate and they're too far away from you, they're most likely going to escape because they have speed over you, and you can't use a micro warp drive to make up that difference in speed. And even without the micro warp drive, you're not going to be able to match them in actual speed to catch them. You're just going to end up matching their regular speed with an afterburner and chasing them through the interdiction sphere. Once they leave, that is when you finally have power again and you can attempt to shoot. Now, if you do respec your skills, this ship will become more lethal in that format because it will have more power in its weapons. At which point this battle cruiser could be very useful. However, I'm just going to open the settings to show you what it is that you actually want in terms of this ship. Now I'm just going to go back. If I remember correctly, it is the Yanjiang. And this is the final class of the ship, the Can-Yue, the actual ship. As you can see, its weapon slots stay the same. It's just that its It's low slots increased by 1. The medium decomposer optimal range increases by 25%. The damage increases by an additional 30%. One command burst module added to the slots. And as you can see, more and more added in terms of the rest of the ship. Now, with all of this being given to your your completed ship, you have a lot of advantage in terms of actual power. And as you can see, its overall defense is much higher than any other battle cruiser at 30,000 straight up when it is made. It's also not a very fast cruiser, but it does have a lot of power to fight. And it can tank quite a bit of damage by all means in terms of actual gameplay. Now I'm just going to have a look at it here just for the sake of a quick look. And let's have a look at its change over here. As you can see, this is one of the highest default battle cruiser um, shield armors, shields, whichever way you want to call it, the shield defense, and then it still has a okay armor. Okay, actually, has a very poor armor with a very good structure. So if you ever lose your shield, you don't have to really stress when your armor falls because your structure, your hull has more integrity than your armor did, and you do have time to warp away. Now, overall, the things that you need to know about this ship. Number one, you can use this ship very easily in close range combat. It actually is very, very well suited to close range combat, and the weapons have very good tracking. Now, when I say they have very good tracking, I mean you almost always hit the target with it. I have never ever missed a target with the ship. I have always made my contact with the target who is within my optimal range. So within 32 kilometers, I've never ever missed with this ship. I've always grazed an opponent and always made some type of impact. I also really did play with this ship in the start of the game, although you don't see any of the gameplay with it. However, due to the sluggishness and the slowness of battle cruisers, I didn't use it to solo any type of missions because they were really outclassed in terms of speed and power by the cruisers at the time without any upgrades. So that is the next option for your interdiction sphere combat. Now this is how it works in the gameplay. Somebody jumps in, you're positioned at the right place, and they arrive within 10 to 20 kilometers of your battle cruiser. The first thing you're going to do is open fire, and your MOA Guardian is going to also open fire while holding the interdiction sphere ship within its range. Now, together, your fire is going to impact the shield at a slow rate. It might impact it at a higher rate if you change up your weapons on the MOA, but let's say that you went with its standard default railguns. So the damage is nice and it's crisp, and the shield will start to fall away pretty quickly. However, the moment you finally have the shield falling away, the damage is now going to increase to your advantage with your decomposers, where the ship's armor is going to start to fall apart. While it has more resistance to the railgun, it's now going to take more damage from the decomposer. And these two mixed in a perfect combination will allow you to strip the ship away very, very fast. Now, in consideration of everything that I've just said, here are all of the benefits of running the Can-Yue. You can use it to hold the enemies in place. They can't underestimate you because they have to stop you and attack you if they do catch you. And if they are trying to catch the rest of your fleet, you can hold them off by starting an attack against them from the back. That will force them to pull back units to keep you down or to destroy you quickly, while that allows other players from your fleet to run away. So your interdiction sphere ship and your MOA Guardian can start heading towards the edge of your bubble and warp away. So that is one of the reasons to run the ship, and that is one of the plays in which the ship would be helpful. Now there are tons of different computations of possible situations and tons of skills that you could use to counteract this weapon, along with ways in which you can play it to counteract other weapons. And I hope that you do find it out as you go along with the game. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day.